Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not So Comic Book. This week is show I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Gen V Season 1, Episode 2. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, that opening with Marie, obviously it's her, obviously Kate's coming across a crime scene, and so is Andre, but just like the blood and guts is being cleaned up in front of them, and I didn't even think about it, well, I think I mentioned it last episode where it's like, I might have mentioned it, I don't remember, but it's like, it's got to be traumatizing for Marie, because the last time she was covered in that much blood and guts, it was, surrounded by so much death and blood and stuff, it's, with her mom and dad, and now it's just, and there she is, like, taking, I don't know if it was some of Luke's blood that was on her, but she's lifting it up, and Andre looks at her, and she just kind of swipes it away, but I think maybe it's just, it probably like triggered a lot of that, but the kind of instant celebrity status that her and Andre kind of get in the aftermath of everything, because they are kind of known as like, oh, they're the ones on video dealing with Golden Boy, and obviously Ashley doing what Ashley does, she has to like spin everything, and so Indira, who brought up something I didn't even think about, because there's a single line of dialogue about it last episode. I touched on a tiny bit, but didn't really go in on it, was the fact is that, you had Marie saying that line of, I was injected with Compound V when I was a kid. And I was like, right. She didn't find out about, obviously, like, that news only dropped season 2, right? So it's been like, that news dropped maybe 2 years ago. She didn't find out until maybe 6 years after her parents died. Like, that's also got to twist you up a little too, because like the only reason why you have powers in the first place is because your parents agreed to have Compound V put into you. They wanted you to become a superhero and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, they just weren't expecting you to get the power that you did, and things to kind of escalate and sadly play out the way they did. Not unless we find out they were, everyone so far we've really gotten to know, they haven't really shown otherwise of any examples of someone getting Compound V without them being aware. It seems like all the parents signed off on it. So that's where I'm like, not unless her circumstance ends up being a situation of it happened without her parents' know-how, so they weren't expecting her to be a soup. But I think once again, we haven't really gotten that opposite spectrum of that. It's always been, at least we got that with Annie and her mom. We haven't really dived into anyone else's relationship with their parent when it comes to the Compound V stuff, but Annie and her mom is the only entry point we've had to that. So I don't know if they're going to make a supporting situation like that with all these other characters, or is it going to be a thing of there are going to be characters mixed in that have the opposite experience of Annie and her mom, because it's like, oh, it was forced upon them. We'll see whether or not they really dive into that or not, because I think that'd be an interesting point to explore. There were some people that were just there were babies given a Compound V without the parents' know-how, so I think that'd be an interesting perspective to kind of dive into. Like I said, we haven't really covered that at all, but we'll see. So obviously Marie's kind of happy about it because she's top 10. She's a freshman, yet she's number 8 in the top 10. And Jordan's not too happy because they are number 5 and Andre's been boosted up to number 1, which is the irony, because like, cool, one of your best friends had to die. Maybe not one of your own, like your best friend died so you can be number 1. They had this whole conversation about once he goes off and joins the 7 at Vought Tower and stuff. It's like, yeah, like once you're at 7 Tower, like I'll be like the number 1 and stuff like that. But Andre didn't want it this way, because you see him kind of go like, okay, and then he like goes to grab the bong, because it's like, yeah, I gotta like get myself through this somehow. Like my friend literally just died the other day, and I'm literally stepping over his corpse to become number 1. So it's like, that's gut wrenching. Jordan, it's really interesting kind of being in their situation, because the conversation they had with Marie is, for them, it's like, Brink is the only one who never got so caught up in my circumstances. And because of that, I was actually somebody. Brink saw me for me. So despite his BS, Brink had good qualities. That's the complicated thing, that even the shittiest people in this world kind of have decent enough qualities in them. It just heavily gets overshadowed by all the shitty things that they do. So Jordan's like, yo, I'm back to being a nobody. So that's why later on it's like, Marie, when you're on your interview, tell them I'm the one that actually fought Golden Boy. Because it's like, oh, you didn't do anything. It's like, well, to be fair, like, You know, it's like, and this ends up being that complicated thing where this kind of ends up being that line drawn between Starlight and Marie, even though they're trying to set her up to be the next Black Starlight, which I think is so interesting. But like I said, like there's a little bit of that Huey, because Huey has his own insecurities that were kind of building and building until we got to season 3, right? Well, Huey wanted to kind of prove himself so much, and so did Starlight, but her proving herself was more like, I'm not going to let you kick me out of this. I'm going to stand my ground no matter how much you want to like push me out and treat me like dirt. I'm not going to compromise who I am to get ahead, you know, in some capacities, but it's like Marie kind of has to, because that's the game, you know? And we're also talking about, we're not even talking about full-grown adults. I mean, even adults struggle with that in this universe, but we're talking about teenagers, you know, young adults. So it's going to cut a little differently. But either way, circling back, Ashley's like, all right, how are we going to spin this situation? Because Ashley's aware of the woods. Who knows how long that, well, I'm assuming as long as Brink's been around, the woods has been a thing. Who knows? It's probably something that's been active since Edgar's time at Vought and stuff like that as well. But Ashley is aware of it because it's like, right, once you become CEO, you probably find out about all the dirt. So Indira, she's kind of the head of all of that too. She even had this interesting line, and this is what I was talking about too, or touching on a little bit earlier about like, oh yeah, like it's a lot for adults to handle about the compound V stuff. I mean, hell, we even saw Black Noir in the hallway weeping. I mean, granted, we saw body language wise, but he was weeping in the hallway the moment that info dropped to the public. But it's like, yeah, like those are full grown adults, like not being able to handle it. These are teenagers. That's rough. Even to the point Indira's like, oh, we haven't had that many like self-harm situations. You know, I hardly had any. And then Ashley was like, well, you definitely had one now. And it's like, the fact is, she's like, oh, we didn't really have that many. It's like, you still had some. But she's like, yeah, I'm the one that, because she has like a psychologist background before she came here to kind of work with like soups and stuff. So it is a situation of she knows how, and that's kind of a key and very important thing we learn about Indira. Like, she's very good at getting inside of people's head, and I think that's going to be a thing we see more and more as the season progresses. But I think it might be that type of situation. Probably very similar to an Ashley. I think there's a little, like, she's a little Edgar, but I think she's also a little Ashley, where, like, Ashley, once again, I talked about, like I mentioned before, there are people who do shitty things that have some, like, we've seen time and time again, peeks into it. I referenced it last episode, the whole Maeve situation. There is good inside of Ashley, but it just gets weighed out by all the other, like, Vought bullshit. And Indira, I think, could be the same way, but it's like this whole situation, whether you're on the human side of things, whether you're on the super side of things, this whole business will shape you. Fame, money, and power, it will twist you and contort you into being someone you don't even recognize anymore. And that's going to be Marie's journey, and I think she's going to struggle with that a lot differently than Starlight did, because once again, there's probably like, because I was about to say, because we don't know how old Starlight was. I mean, Annie was when she became Starlight, like when she joined the Seven. I'd assume like early to mid 20s, maybe, because I know, probably when the boys started, because I think Erin Moriarty's like what, early 30s, so I don't know. Annie's early 30s, or at least by the start of the show. I don't know if she was like, her character's younger than she is, so like, because she was probably like late 20s when she started. No, I'm completely mistaken. I thought she was already in her 30s. She's 29, so I guess she was, so I'd probably say Annie's probably about the same. So I'd probably say like she was like mid 20s when she was casting the boys, so I'd probably say Annie probably was too. So my point is, we know that that Marie's 18, so there's at least a couple years difference. Does it make that big of a difference, 18 versus maybe 24 or 25? Because like I said, I don't remember them ever mentioning Annie's age. But either way, I don't know. I guess I just assumed like Erin was already in her 30s, but no, she's only 29. Interesting. Either way, tangents and all that aside, my point was that was a whole interesting conversation, and Indira's doing everything she can to kind of cover this up. They had that whole conversation about like, all right, like this is going to work to our advantage. You know, once again, gonna Vought, where it's like, hey, we're going to booster Andre and Marie. Luckily, Marie's a beautiful girl, so we can really push that, really push the NAACP. I butchered that acronym, but it's like, oh, we'll really push that. It's like, well, Jordan's the one that actually fought Golden One's like, oh, cool, a bi-gender Asian person that's going to complicate things with pronouns. That's going to work super well in like Dallas, Texas. And it's like, once again, looking at it from like that, you got to make sure it works with all the bases. Once again, that reasoning and stuff behind it, because that was even a kind of a point that Jordan was bringing up, like, oh yeah, I'm like popularity wise, like I'm not going to reach, my circumstances isn't going to resonate with people in Florida, which about to call the actress by her real name of Jazz, Marie is like, yeah, Florida wouldn't be the biggest fan of me either, so. Because she had to, like, go in on Andre and Jordan being like, I don't owe you guys anything. The fact of the matter is, I was about to get expelled because of your shenanigans last episode. I tried to do the right thing. You guys were going to lead someone to bleed and die, but to save your own asses, you all bailed, and I stayed behind, and I was going to get kicked out. This means a lot to me. It's like, because Andre's like, oh, how could you not do anything? You're really going to... She's like, I came here because this is my only opportunity. There's too much on the line for me. Your dad being who he is, you get a lot of sway, because I forgot to talk about that last episode. We did learn that Andre's dad is someone of importance, because it's like, right, he had kind of referenced that, I think, last episode when he was talking to Luke. But we made his dad this episode, who was played by Sean Patrick Thomas. Obviously, the movie I'm most familiar with him from is the Barbershop movies. But I also kind of gave us a little more clarity on Andre's abilities, because his dad's name is Polarity. So, because we haven't really dived into that, because obviously Ryan's the first natural born soup. So that means like Andre, like everyone else, was given the compound V. But I guess it's like, cause we haven't really dived into, because it's been something they kind of, obviously what powers you get is just based on what's written in your DNA. So I guess because he's got his dad's DNA led to him having the abilities he has. So of course Andre's going to have the same abilities as well, which makes me wonder that hasn't gotten covered at all. It does. I didn't even think about it at the time, but that means like Zoe, Victoria's daughter, will most likely be a head popper too, because it's just part of her DNA. So I'm assuming it feels like that's what that's kind of implying, because I'm assuming Andre's got maybe the exact same abilities as his dad. Maybe they're different, but I'd assume that's kind of what that might be implying. Because I was thinking like his power was like more like manipulating like the molecular structure of stuff, like transmutation type of stuff. But it seems like it's closer to probably Magneto abilities, like it's metal and stuff. And it's like, well, it was a coin that he like shaped into a bird and stuff. So it's like, how that really works, once again, his dad being called Polarity. So it might be a thing of, once again, his dad might have a completely different ability than him, but his dad is like, oh, you're going to be like the next Polarity. So I'd assume with the name and everything and continue with the legacy that they have similar, if not the exact same ability, but that could be a misconception on my part. I love that the school does have its own version of Ashley. It's a dude, social media Jeff, and he's like, my soul sister. I'm sorry, I didn't mean no offense to you or your community by me saying that. But he's like, oh yeah, like, because people running up to her like, oh, can I get a picture? She's like, no, they take it anyway. And even Andre's like, you kind of just have to say yes, just so you can give people the illusion of choice. And it's like, once again, that's kind of a commentary of like, yeah, like people just randomly coming up to you, like wanting a picture from you all the time. It's like how fans could be towards celebrities. Not everyone's a weirdo around celebrities, but you know, there are those weirdo interactions that famous people have, you know? So I think it's kind of tugging at that a little bit. Oh my god, director dude. The dude who directed Dawn of the Seven. I love that he shows up because he's teaching like an acting class, and even like the person beside Emma in the class was like, didn't that dude direct Dawn of the Seven? It's like, why is he here? It's like, oh yeah, but he showed Minka Kelly his dick, so he's in director jail. Which I'm like, there's so much to that. First and foremost, why specifically Minka Kelly? I had to look it up to make sure. I was like, is Minka Kelly who I think it is? And it said, yes. If you're, the thing I best know her from is the show Titans, the DC show. She's Dawn, aka Dove, in Titans. I thought that's who that was when I heard the name Minka Kelly, but I was like, why specifically her? Is that just to kind of tie her in because like she has been in that superhero universe? I wonder I had to look that up. I was about to say, I wonder, does she have a connection to Eric Kripke in any way? The reason I was bringing it up because I was wondering, like, was she ever on Supernatural or something? Like I said, maybe there's a deeper reason, but I was like, that was a very specific name to pull. I mean, you could have pulled anyone's name, but I'm like, why specifically Minka Kelly? Like I said, my connection to her would just be like because of a superhero connection, but it could be something else. But like I said, other elements to that is like, yeah, he's in director jail, and it's like, it's like, well, that's a deeper commentary on like people who are, certain directors or actors or celebrities in general or comedians who got in trouble, who are in comedian jail for similar things. So I'm like, that. I don't know. I don't know why I'm beating around the bush. Immediately I'm thinking, I mean, he wouldn't be the first one, but obviously first person that comes to my mind is like Louis C.K. So I'm like, especially because they had wasn't just showing his dick. It was him literally jerking off in front of women. So I was like, because I know Peacemaker had a joke about it, but the whole bit situation about that. But either way, so he's kind of stuck here, and it's like, yeah, I directed like a large-scale superhero movie, and it's like, I think that's probably a bigger commentary too of like, yeah, it doesn't matter how big of a celebrity you are, whatever you are in your field, no matter how big you are, you do something. Once again, he's in like, once again, director jail. It's not, he didn't go to jail, but it's like, yeah, he's in kind of, it's like, oh, we're putting him in like a sensitivity situation to kind of, especially I'm sure it never went public because we don't know if they actually have a relationship or not. But like, obviously we know him and Ashley hooked up in like the first episode of last season. But beyond that, we don't know if they really even have a relationship. Because that was like our only instance of ever seeing anything happen in between them. So it might have just been like a hookup at the premiere. That's all there is to it. Nothing more, nothing less type of thing. They'd also referenced Termite, which I thought was so interesting because I'm so stupid. I kept making these correlations between Termite and Emma, but I'm like, there's no way he's like there's no way she's Termite's kid or something having similar powers. And it's like, cause they were like supposed to pull from like a movie or whatever to kind of do like quotes and like, act out stuff. And she was picking a whole bunch of Termite movies. Cause it's like, right, I get small. So I'm assuming most people would want me to be small. But then like Justine was like, no. I was like, yeah, I went to a party where that guy was holding stuff with Bryan Singer. I was like, wow, that's interesting. Talking about how gross it is, and I don't know if he put him in director jail or not. That's a whole situation I'm not well versed enough on the comment on, but the moment that name got dropped, I was like, that was a name drop on purpose, especially with Home Dude being in director jail. And I was like, that's really, really interesting. And then even Justine being like, oh yeah, it was a gross party. I was like, I doubt it's the party from the beginning of season 3. I even love, she was like, yeah, but I think he OD'd. I was like, what? I was like, oh, right. I was like, yeah, where's Termite? When the last time we saw him was at HeroGasm. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. Homelander stepped on him and killed him at HeroGasm. It's like, right. I mean, I guess it's almost like the Alex situation of like, oh, how did Alex, aka Supersonic, die? Oh yeah, he overdosed, so it's probably like that. So I guess people don't know he died. I mean, we know a whole bunch of people died at HeroGasm, but I guess no one knows that he died at HeroGasm. I mean, he was shrunk down when he died, which is horrendous. So like, no one knows. Most people are probably like, oh yeah, he probably did just OD somewhere. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe that's just so interesting. That kind of got swept under the rug. We caught up a little. I brought her up earlier, Victoria, but we got low peak. Oh, Victoria. Oh, Homelander on trial. And then there's also that guy. He's the reporter guy. What's his name? Cameron or something. The dude I associate with Ashley pegging with a giant Homelander strap on. Because that scene just yeah, that's just like, you're always going to be like, oh yeah, you're the dude that Ashley pegged, like, with a Homelander strap on. That's just going to be my image of you from now on, dude. But him pushing the whole thing of like, oh yeah, basically, Luke's parents are in hiding, and it's like, oh, what are they hiding from? It's like, oh, pushing that narrative of like, what did they do to raise such a psychotic kid? It must have been something at the home, blaming them. But obviously Andre and Kate are like, nah, like, Luke's parents are the sweetest. Like, they are the ones trying to figure it out. I was almost thinking to myself too that this season has a little bit of a mystery element to it more so than the other. But I'm like, I guess arguably you could be like, well, I mean, every season's kind of had its thing of kind of unraveling everything. Like, oh, finding out about Compound V in season 1, or finding out about Stormfront situation, or in season 2, or season 3. Oh, and also, like, there was a mystery element of who was the head popper. And in season 3, finding out about the weapon they needed to, you know, everything related to Soldier Boy, because they initially thought it was a weapon to kill Homelander, yada, 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 so on and so forth. So I'm like, but it's still a little bit of a mystery element of figuring out what the Wood stuff is, but it is still in line with, like, every other season of the boys having that thing of, like, oh, let's unravel this thing and figure out what role it has to play in all of this. Did not realize the guy that Andre and Marie helped capture was Luke's brother. It was like, that's actually really sad. I mean, he's been part of the Woods for a very long time, because he's been under the impression like, oh yeah, my brother died. They even reference it like, oh, he was at, because it was like, yeah, he was at that something grow facility. I was like, interesting. So we're bringing that place back into, I wonder. No, because I was like, the Woods have had to be active for a while. But maybe that's the thing of, after everything went down in season 2, maybe they moved the facility. So now it's here, or at least maybe that adult facility that Marie was being threatened, like, oh, like, you could end up getting sent here, like that facility, maybe that's the adult version, and the kid version is here in the university, because less eyes and ears, and you're able to kind of get away with it. You have a whole bunch of test subjects you can, I don't know. Because we know at least Sam's down there, so we don't know who else might be in the Woods, you know? So, because they done a lot to clean up, because the moment Andre and Kate went to go see Luke's room, it had been completely wiped. Even like every trace that he'd ever existed. I mean, for one, it makes sense because it's like, I mean, his door literally got spray painted like murderer on it. So you want to remove all you can about him for the sake of, hey, like, gotta preserve your image. I mean, even Ashley's like, cool, I've got 45 mil worth of Golden Boy merch I'm going to have to like burn because of all of this. So there's that angle to it, but also, like, you don't want to leave any trace behind, because who knows what he could have left behind about what he knew. Because they knew, like, the moment he went after Brink, it means he found out about everything. I don't know how much Andre really told everyone, because he didn't really, like, he talked to his dad about it, because he's like, did you know something? Because Luke's like, you had it. He's like, what? It's like, no, never mind. It doesn't matter. So I was like, interesting. But it's like, right, Luke had hidden a video explaining, like, my brother's still alive. Brink, I'm going to get him to confess what he did and tell me where my brother is, but Sam's still alive. They faked his death. So, but he even said, like, right, he did something to me and to Sam. Because I brought this up last episode. It's something we hadn't really gotten to see, like, the limitations on what the powers do to people. But it feels like we're really diving into it this episode of, like, the backlash to your powers. I mean, because it feels more like, it's more like the facility in season 2. Because those were powers, like, those were V powers that, it's like, oh, we're trying V on adults, and it's not 100% syncing. Well, because they've had a better sync rate with babies, but, like, you know, maybe there is flawed compound but it seems like, because some of these abilities have their backlash, like, obviously because she using her own blood takes a lot out of Marie. Every time I want to say the character's name, I want to say the actress's name, Jazz. Like, I immediately almost have to stop myself from saying Jazz and say Marie. But either way, she has her limitations. Once again, she's using her own blood, makes sense. But we even saw this episode, Kate kind of, like, takes a toll on her, because we even saw, like, her eye, almost like like almost like a blood vessel popped in her eye because her eye was like super reddish at one point. She had pushed that dude who I saw, he was in a little bit the first episode, but as, was it Alexander, Calvert is his name? He's Jack from Supernatural. I was like, hey! I was like, that's so dope. Another Supernatural alumni. That's super dope. But, cause he was talking shit about Golden Boy, that it's like, oh yeah, like, he had to go through the trouble of, her, like, killing himself in order to get away from Kate. And she's like, cool, go buy a bat and bash yourself in the nuts, and scream out Jumanji every time you do it. So there's that. There's also Emma, who has her backlash, as we learned last episode. She has to throw up to get small. And it's so sad because Home Dude wanted nothing to do with her, even though they did what they did last episode. But it turns out that's kind of his thing. It's like, oh yeah, he wants people, like he gets with people just so he can, like feel better about his small thimble dick is how Justine put it. But it's like, oh, I want to be around you. You're funny. You're likable. You have 1 million followers. I can barely scratch like 10K on my YouTube. So it seemed like there was a genuine friendship building there. And it's like, right, you don't have to get small unless you want to, unless that's kind of your thing. But it's like, yeah, like getting small sucks for her because she has to throw up. Because she even let it slip. She's like, yeah, it's messing up the enamel on my teeth. And it's like, yeah, she has to throw up to get small. And the moment it was like, oh, Justine broke that news to everyone, I was like, oh, why would you do that? But it legitimately seems like she didn't mean to do it. She was like, oh, fuck. Because she's like, no, I didn't know it was a secret. It's like, of course it's a secret, and now everyone knows. Because there's even guys be like, like kind of poking fun of her because teenagers are assholes. I mean, guys can be assholes in general, but, you know. But there was also that girl being like, is this true? You should really get some help. It's like, no one wants people to know about their trauma and the pain and the things that they go through. Cause now it's like, everyone's going to like look at you a certain way. It's like, it's so interesting. Cause like Emma does have this, like, I think she overcompensates like the whole, like everything last episode. Like, oh yeah, like when I have a 3-way and she's acting like super horny and stuff. But I think it's also like an overcompensation. Cause that's why she really latched on to Marie. Cause I don't think she really has any friends, but that's kind of going kablooey. Cause Marie's like, I just want to keep my head low, which that's kind of a moot point when you add in like all the fame she's getting really quickly. So once again, it's kind of like the starlight of like, yeah, rather than focusing on the bad, let's like raise you up because you make us look better, especially in the aftermath of the Golden Boy tragedy. So I think a lot of that plays into it, but also Justine getting that girl to like suck her own tail. I was like, yeah, treat it like a dick. And then like she was even gagging. I was like, that's fucking weird, dude. Then there's the Indira situation where she ended up talking to Marie, and it's like trying to like break through, like, oh yeah, let's kind of talk, and you know, why do you know, oh, I know your parents' tragedy is what kind of motivates you. She's like, no, I'm just here. I want to get to the 7 because hey, the view at the tower. But it's like, no, Indira was able to kind of get to the heart of it. It's like my sister. And I brought it up last episode. She wants her sister to look at her like a hero, and if she is, she's able to like make her sister see her differently. And obviously, once it's that, like I brought up, that struggle of, hey, I'm trying to do the right thing, especially when Jordan pleaded for me to tell the truth. And now it's a situation of, yeah, especially because Andre wasn't there because he was looking into I was about to say Soldier Boy, Golden Boy of it all, because he walked past a piece of his friend still in the concrete because it wasn't all cleaned up. And it's like, right, it's like, yes, I want to be number one. It's not just because my dad wants it, I want it, but at the same time, this is my best friend. Like, he's more important than all this like superhero fame bullshit. It means nothing. Like, I got to find out what happened to my friend, you know? I got to find out the truth because apparently no one else cares enough. But so that put Marie in a situation where she was the only one getting interviewed. I love that the person behind this is Courtney, played by Jackie Tones, is back. I think season 2 was the last time we saw her with the whole Maeve and Elena of it all. Wasn't that season 2 or was that season 1? I want to say that was season 2. I know that obviously came up more in season 2, the whole Elena and Maeve, but that might have been season 1 where she was like, I think it might have been season 1, might not have even been season 2, probably was season 1, but she's back, and I even love, she's like, are all these chains going to bother poor people? And it's like, no. It's like, yeah, you're right, that, you know, they were already poor, so it's not like it's going to matter. It's like, Jesus. It's like, I mean, on every rung of the ladder that is VOT, just everyone's shitty. Because even she had said the line about Marie being like, hey, she's either going to crash and burn, which is going to be awesome ratings wise either way, or she's going to be the next she's going to be the next Black Starlight, be the Black Starlight. And especially when that Haley woman who was interviewing her is like, yeah, we tried to get a comment from your sister. It's like, whoa, you know where she is? Because that's another angle to it for Marie. It's like, if I can get my sisters, like if I become rich and famous, I'll be able to track down my sister, because I've been trying to look for her for years, but with enough money and resources, I'll be able to find her. But then she was like, yeah, your sister wanted nothing to do with you. And the moment that was said, I was like, that should point out the fact is that she knows. It's like, hey, they could have done their own research, but I was like, Indira had to have dropped that. I was like, they never found your sister. This was all bullshit to manipulate you. Especially later on when she confronts Indira. It's like, did you know? And she's like, of course I did. And hugged her. And it's like, she had that look. It's like that manipulation. I brought it up. She's a lot like Edgar and Ashley. She's actually more like Stillwell, to be fair. She's a lot like Matt. I think it's probably more so meant to be, like I said, she probably doesn't have like this sympathetic, well, at least we haven't so far. I mean, this is only episode 2. We haven't really seen this sympathetic element to her like Ashley. Once again, Ashley can be manipulative. She can be kind of like the very corporate person, but there is peeks into her humanity. Stillwell was just all manipulation, especially like the way she handled Homeland. So she's probably a lot more like Stillwell than anybody else, so. There's also something from last episode I didn't really talk about that I should have, was Marie, like, when she was sitting down on the ground and she, like, after she was getting expelled by Brink, she cut herself open. I, for a second, and I didn't talk about this, but because it ties into this episode, where I thought for a second she was going to take all the blood. I thought she was going to unalive herself by, like, taking all the blood out of her body and dying that way. I thought that's where it was going, but she only took a fraction of her blood. But it does seem like it is so messed up, like, with the ability she has, like, she needs to cut herself if she wants blood readily available, but it also is that self-harm thing of she's a cutter, so, like, it probably makes her, like, alleviate some of the pain she's going through, and it's like, I thought it was very poignant what they were doing, too, because after she gave the interview, she didn't give Jordan any props. It's because Indira set that up so that, because she saw how back and forth Maria was about it, Marie was about it, so she dropped that sister stuff, because once again, she's the only person you've talked to about your sister at all in that capacity, so she knew, like, oh, this is a point I can exploit and use to push you and prop you up like this, to kind of make you more on our side of things. But that made her go like, yeah, I'm gonna lean into it, I'm gonna be this person, because it's kind of, for her, it's all she has, because now she thinks like, oh, there's nothing I could ever reach out to my sister, or maybe it's a situation of, well, this motivates me even more, that if I become top dog, if I really excel, my sister will have like, she will see that I'm good. I'll prove her wrong that she should, but it's like, I don't think they ever got in contact with your sister. Either we're going to find out your sister has no idea what's really going on with you, maybe she's actually tried to reach out to you, but they've kept you isolated. There's that possibility. 2, there's a possibility that, like I said, they never just reached out to her. The other possibility could be that she's dead. Or 3, they actually did reach out to her, but she didn't, like, maybe she actually really did respond that way. So I'm leaning towards, my initial thought was they didn't reach out to her. It's a complete and utter BS, but we'll see. I'm curious to find out, like, maybe her sister's been looking for her just as much as, maybe Annabeth has been looking for Marie just as much. Marie's been looking for her, but we'll see. But anyway, the point I was making is that Marie is like cutting herself to make herself feel better because she was so alone. Because her and Emma, like I said, really latched on to her, and then it's like, like, because Emma wanted, like, I don't think Emma really has any friends, and like the only friend she was making this episode kind of blew up in her face as well. So I think, because she even admitted that getting small makes her feel gross. I mean, the process in which she has to, like, literally purge her body to get small is that, but I'm sure that gives you all kinds of complexes. You know, I brought that up last episode as well, and so now that's really, really heartbreaking. I mean, because you're really, really leaning into something that a lot of people in general deal with, but it's definitely something that it is something you definitely would see prominently in a young woman, like having, maybe like some body issues and standards of beauty. That was also the point that Justine was making of like, right, like this patriarchy like makes women believe like, oh, you have to be a certain way. And, it's like, that's not fully why Emma does what she does, but it's like Justine kind of used that and exploited it for her purposes. Like, yeah, she got a following and likes out of it, but it's like I said, I don't think that was fully her intention because she probably thought like everyone knew, but it's like, other than Marie and Justine, we haven't really seen Emma really like interact with anyone on a very, very friendly basis. So she kind of has walked away with no friends so far. So, but I keep diverting away. But yeah, because of Marie's experience, like the self-harm element to it, it's connected to her abilities, but it's almost like because she hates herself because of her powers and what her powers did to her parents, what she did to her parents, and seeing herself as a monster because her sister sees her as a monster. And then you also add in the fact is that it helps, I'm sure, like alleviate some of that pain she's feeling. She needs an outlet for it. So, and then she also believes she deserves it. So there's so much layered upon like her like cutting herself. Like there's layers and layers to like what that represents for that character. And now Indira is like even more like of that motherish figure to her of like, oh, you can count on me. Like I'm taking over Brink's combat classes and stuff, especially because like, hey, you're the first freshman to be a part of the top 10. And now you're also going to be moved up to this class, which is typically full of juniors. So there's just a lot on Marie's plate. Andre found out about Sam, and when he found like the room that kind of the secret room that leads to I think the woods and stuff, but he almost got caught, but luckily Kate was there to back him up. Like the moment that guard went over to him and everything was like, oh, like I'm gonna shove this down your throat and then you're also gonna take this up, essentially take it up your ass. And then like Kate pushed the guy and he was like, oh yeah, like I'm all about it. So like she uses it like a strap one and it's just like, oh god, he's sucking on the flashlight. I'm like, oh, okay, wow. Okay, interesting. It's going to be a big point of contention going forward too that Andre didn't show up for that interview and shoot. In fact, he got removed from it. That's why it mainly all focused on Marie, which is going to make her catch even more flack from probably Andre, but they're also probably going to ignore her, but also catch a lot of flack from Jordan. That's going to probably lead to even more beef between them. I mean, everyone's going through their thing. Like, everyone just wants to be seen and just wants to make the best of their circumstances. So, the sad thing is Jordan and Marie have once again, because Jordan doesn't know Marie's circumstances. No one does. So, if they did, they'd probably all be a little bit more sympathetic. Because, once again, but everyone's got their issues. It's not a situation of comparing and contrasting traumas. Like, everyone's got their thing. It doesn't mitigate what your situation is for you. Like, just because it doesn't have to be like on the same equal playing field. Everyone going through what they're going through is their thing. So what Jordan's going through doesn't have to be compared and contrast to what Maria's going through and what she's been through. It is everyone's pain is their own pain. No more, no less type of situation. So it's not, trauma doesn't need to be compared and contrasted, of like, oh, who's more traumatized and who has more pain, who has more issues and stuff like that. And like all these main characters we've gotten introduced to are going through it in some shape or form. But yeah, it definitely seems like Andre's dad's in his life and stuff, but his dad has expectations of, oh, this is who I am, so this is who you're going to be. So he's not going to be too happy. He's definitely not too happy about Andre missing out on that interview because this could have set him up to push him towards the sevens. Because Andre's a reflection on him. So when you don't show up, when you either the shine is kind of going off Andre's dad, and it's why he's really pushing like, right, you've got to kind of keep up the family legacy because the shine's kind of like shown, like the brightness on me is kind of like started to dim, so it's time for you to shine. And when you don't step up to the plate, you're making me look bad because he actually obviously had a high position, I think, at the school because he was in the same like room with Indira and everything. So either way, it's definitely going to be interesting to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. good day, and goodbye.